Hi friends, starting a non-profit organization and running various social projects might be initially challenging. In this video, I'm going to deep dive into a couple of things which you can keep in mind in order to structure your ideas, maybe start smoothly and run a successful non-profit organization so that we can collectively create a greater impact in the community around us. Feel free to share this video with your friends to whom it might help and add value. So friends, we are going to structure our thoughts in the following manner. But before that, let's understand a non-governmental organization, which is generally restricted to a social, cultural, environmental, and legal advocacy with primarily a non-commercial goal. NGO is generally task-oriented with a common interest to perform varieties of service and support to the community. So friends, first step is to try and identify what are we trying to achieve. So, while starting a non-profit organization, you need to understand the reason why we are starting, and there need to be a real personal motivation to actually start an NGO. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to try and manage in the long run. So, once you identify your personal motivation or the reason for which you are passionate about a particular cause, then look for the problem statement to try and understand what exactly is something which you are trying to solve, and then look for the other NGOs or organizations which are already working in the space to try and solve that particular problem, and maybe start volunteering or start working with those organizations to understand the solutions what they are offering. And over a period of time, while when you work with those organizations, you'll understand if there is any gap in this particular space which you are passionate to resolve. So if in case you work with those organizations, maybe try and share them the feedback in terms of how they can do things better. Or maybe you might be surprised to look at their response in terms of maybe starting a subsidiary or a other division, which they might give you an opportunity to lead on the ground. And it's the best opportunity, right, to work for a cause where all the other headache of running the organization has been taken care, and you directly work on that particular cause and be satisfied. But if in case you're not able to identify such and you still find the areas where you can improvise, that is when you plan to start your own organization. And this journey will just define your complete vision and mission. To be honest, vision, mission statement, and the idea of starting your own organization do not start from the scratch. Like, as you progress towards the journey of identifying the problem and understanding what you're trying to offer to the beneficiary, that is where you come up with the mission statement, and that forms as a fundamental step to start your own nonprofit. So the second step to the process is to understand the timelines, which is very important. To be honest, I work completely on deadlines. Being in corporate, without deadlines, none of my work gets on time. So I feel it's important to have a timeline in place while pursuing a particular project or starting a non-profit. So in this case, you can understand from two perspectives. One is your personal timeline based on your other commitments. You need to understand when do you want to really start or step in. And the second is the urgency of a problem. Let's say if you want to serve a particular community, let's say people impacted by floods in, say, a particular village, you need to understand the cause, and the problem is very urgent. We cannot plan to start something at a later point in future. The third step is to understand the reason, which I think we have already touched base, that we need to have a personal reason or a motivation to pursue something, and that identifies the passion in yourself to try and pursue a particular project without anything in written, honestly. And in terms of the timeline, I would just like to share that when I started my organization in my 20s, I was initially with a thought that, okay, let me plan to start something like this after my retirement, maybe once I have a financial stability or security. But to be honest, I always felt that to be as a myth, and to start at a later stage, especially after this current time of COVID and stuff, where the average age has reduced from, say, 63 to almost 45 or 50. So we never know what is tomorrow. So I always feel if in case you have something in your mind to start off ASAP. Now the fourth step is to identify who. And this is very essential to understand why are we really doing this and for whom are we doing this, along with whom are we gonna do this. So very important is to understand the beneficiary of the problem. Like when you try and solve the problem, who are you trying to solve this? Identify them, try and understand with them, given a chance, live with them to know in and out about their problem, its grievance in terms of how intense is that particular problem. And that is when you would be able to empathize and accordingly customize and solve that particular issue. And the second very important in who is to identify a right team, especially a co-founder or a very core trustee group who will going to support you in your journey ahead and who shares a very similar like-minded approach or ideas of taking things forward. So these are very important aspects. Identify a right team and understand the beneficiary. The fifth step is to how do you want to start this non-profit? And to be honest, in today's world of internet, it's very easy to figure out. There is a lot of material online in terms of how can you start, what are the various types of NGOs which you can plan to begin and register. But if in case there is enough interest, I can try and make a detailed video on step by step as to how do one register and how do one plan to begin an organization in a very easy manner. So that it becomes easier for you to take it forward. And the second important aspect on how is to how do you manage the funds for the NGO in terms of raising donations or using your personal funds. But to be honest, you don't need much money to start an NGO. If you have a right intent, you can begin right away and start creating an impact in the community, leveraging your current skill set. It is not always money, but the time and the right connections make a big difference in terms of maybe creating collaborations, synergies to create an impact. Sixth step is where do you want to set up this NGO? And this would based on the proximity where the beneficiaries are, where your current team is in. So based on that, you can plan to decide the place. But to be honest, in today's world, it really doesn't matter in terms of the place. All I believe is to try and set it up in such a way that it is as economical as possible. In spite of your beneficiaries being in, say, metros or in slums, you try and set up the NGO maybe in tier 2 city or maybe completely virtual. Like my particular NGO do not have a rented place. We completely believe in trying to reduce the cost as much as possible and maybe have a no fixed cost like except maybe internet or the website cost. I don't believe there need to be any particular huge recurring expenditure which one should commit upon while starting or running an NGO. So friends, to sum up, the first 6 steps which we talked about for planning to start a non-profit is to identify what exactly is the cause you wanted to work and which areas or the gaps which you want to fill. And in this journey, you would try and maybe work with other organizations and try and identify the existing solutions and maybe the proposed unique solution which you're going to offer in the journey ahead. The second was to talk about when do you want to start. This depends upon the urgency of the problem you're trying to solve. And secondly, when are you ready in terms of your other personal commitments? The third step was to understand why are you trying to start this organization, and it's all purely based upon your the passion which you're driven by, and that's on the back of maybe your personal reasons or motivation to be passionate about a particular cause. Fourth was to identify who do you want to do this and with whom do you want to do this. So have a right team in place. To be honest, one man army doesn't work. Maybe it works only on a Telugu movie and those are like super hit movies, but in the real world, it is all the team which makes you give the best and create an impact in the long run. And that's super important. I always believe in having a right team and right people along, and it creates a multiplier impact in the journey. And then identify the beneficiary, try and understand, maybe work with them, live with them. It's going to help you understand the problem as detailed as possible. Then the fifth step is to understand how do you want to do this. Maybe start an organization, work with another organization, or start a subsidiary of another organization, and then also plan for the funding as well as to how are you gonna run this. Especially if in case you're planning to have full-time employees, it's going to be a lot of recurring costs. So I always believe that when you're planning to start, decide on where do you want to start. Maybe plan to start a completely virtual office and maybe have part-time employees or interns to whom you might not have to pay a lot of money. And may in that process you understand your beneficiary, you set up processes, you try and automate them, and over a period of time you will have economies of scale where you would reduce the cost and directly serve the beneficiary as a whole. So that's it for today, and I will see you in the next video.